Houston, our instruments are showing that we have a incoming message from deep space. Repeat, Houston, we have an incoming message from deep space. Houston, we will begin playing message now. Houston, we're going to try and translate that up here. Hold for translation. Translation complete. We'll begin playing message now.
Hey, it's me, Melissa.
What do you do when the aliens invade? Take a shot of MK Ultra and watch Melissa Jade. Put on your tinfoil hat and tune right in. We got that crime spree, flat earth theories, government conspiracies, a complex Mandela effects, unidentified objects, a mind expanding, fake moon landing, what it all bends understanding. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa. Aliens was on the sun or in Area 51. Time travels, unravels, haunted castles, cops are baffled, potential experimental thoughts that make you transcendental. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa. Crime sprees, flat earth theories, government conspiracies, complex Mandela effects, unidentified objects, a mind expanding, fake moon landing, what it all bends understanding. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hello, Mallory, Tess, and Shay. How are you, ladies?
Hello. Good.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hey.
So first things first, I want to say my condolences to Heels in the Air and her family right now. Unfortunately, she passed away, so I'm just sending a lot of love and positivity to her family, and I know that there's a lot of people on the platform who were close to her, so I'm just sending everybody a lot of positive energy. With that being said, I'm very anxious and excited to do part 2 of the bizarre disappearance of Maura Murray. We just hit over 20-year anniversary of her disappearance, and unfortunately it is a cold case, and I really would love some answers for this family, especially after listening to Maura's sister's podcast and just hearing them after all of this time. And you know what was so sad? Finding out that Maura's mom had passed away on Maura's birthday. Did you hear that part?
Yeah. I actually re-listened to it today.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, my heart broke. My heart just broke. But I hope that they took it as she's, see, I don't want to say she's with Maura because we don't know what happened to Maura, but some type of connection and instead of taking it in a negative way. But I just found, I'm like, wow, it's crazy. And hello to everybody in the chat. If you did not watch part 1, we had part 1 over on Mallory's channel on MALicious Intents. I will be dropping her link throughout, and her link and the direct link to part 1 is in the description of this live. All resources and everything is also in the description of this live because we're going to be talking about sensitive subjects. So please, if you need help, you can look in the description and get the resources and links to anything that may be needed. But basically on part 1, Mallory took us through the entire history of Maura and her backstory and her family and where she was raised and what her home life was like leading into graduating high school and all of the different schools that she attended, including some shift in behaviors, including stealing. And we kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole of what we thought she may have been struggling with, as far as, do you think that this was self-sabotage? Do you think that she was trying to get kicked out of school, things along that road. And then we spoke all the way up to the day of her disappearance. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to jump back to the night before, just for anybody who may not have watched part 1, and just because I like leading up to 24 hours. So we're going to just jump back to the night before Maura went missing and just kind of go through the order of events into when she disappeared. Right, Harlot? Harlot says it would be crazy if she left to live another life and has managed to stay undetected for 20 years. That would be very difficult these days. And I agree, and we're going to get into all of that, but it's the lack of anything. She didn't have anything, no money that we're aware of. So I don't see how that's even possible, but we're going to get into all of it. Hey, Shakto, is there anything you guys want to say before we begin?
I don't think so.
Okay, and here I'm just gonna put this up. This is Maura's details, her description, the last location, her information, and then the phone number that you could reach for the cold case unit is scrolling across the bottom, but it's also on this overlay, and that is her case number and NCIC number. But all right, so let me see. Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. But I'm just gonna start. Okay. You know what? While I pull this up, okay, hold on. Here we go. So I'm gonna pull this timeline up for starters. Okay. So first of all, look how beautiful she is. She had dimples for days. She had the most beautiful smile ever. So that just needs to be said. So Friday, February 6th, all classes at UMass are canceled because of a snowstorm. Between 10 p.m. and 10:38 p.m., Maura talks to Kathleen. Kathleen is Maura's eldest sister. What we do know now is that Kathleen was struggling with addiction, alcohol dependency, and that she had gone into rehab for a period of time. So just keep that in mind as context. Between 12:07 a.m. to 12:14 a.m., Maura is on the phone with Bill, her boyfriend. I don't want to get into that part because that's okay. So we got into this on Mallory's channel. While Maura was working, and this is after she had just gotten into an accident with her dad's car. She's working. She gets a call from her eldest sister. For the longest time, nobody even knew what Kathleen's version of events was on that call. But apparently, Kathleen had expressed to Maura that as soon as she was picked up at rehab from her husband, he immediately brought her to the liquor store and she relapsed. And this was an opportunity to control Kathleen. But obviously, Maura's going to be very upset about that. But when she had gotten off the phone with Kathleen, it wasn't anything where she had a massive meltdown on the spot, but that's the context of the call. And then at around 1 a.m., Maura has, I don't know how you guys would describe it. It says a meltdown, but I don't know. She became inconsolable. She's at work, guys. She's at work. She became inconsolable, wasn't able to communicate to the point where her supervisor is called. Again, this is 1 a.m. Her supervisor is called to the scene. She is unresponsive, awake, but unresponsive. And the only things that her supervisor is able to really make out from what Maura is saying is my sister, my sister. So the supervisor walks Maura back to her dorm and she offers to come in to make sure that she gets settled and that she's okay. And Maura reassures her, no, I'm fine. I have a roommate. Well, she did not have a roommate, but after she gets back to her dorm a little while later, she orders, what was it, Domino's, right?
Something like that.
She orders a lot of pizza. Now, if you were not
10 pizzas. I believe
Yeah.
it was 10 pizzas.
Something like
10
that.
pizzas. So if you guys were not here for part one, Maura did struggle with an eating disorder. And so this is called binge eating. Now, don't know if the call with Kathleen triggered something. We started speculating on this during part one. Is it possible that she struggles with the impulse control and she just, because it's hours later, it's like 3 hours later after she gets off the phone with Kathleen, that all of a sudden she has this massive meltdown, inconsolable, in tears, isn't even able to communicate? Is it possible that she just needed an out and she very much relied emotionally on the binge eating and so did what she had to do to get out of that situation? Did something else take place? Did another call take place that we don't know about? We don't know. That's the weird part, but that's what's so bizarre about her disappearance. Is it wasn't even just the disappearance itself, it was the events leading up to her disappearance that are also very peculiar. Thank you, Court, for being a member for 4 months. It's very kind. Thank you. And you guys just interrupt me at any point and just add whatever you would like to add.
I think they were peculiar because they were so out of character. Just wanted to add that. That's it.
Yep. Okay, and I'm sorry. Hold on.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say and it's interesting too because although every decision that she's making is like disorganized, at the same time it seems like all the decisions she's making are very intentional, which is also an interesting point of view when looking at like the why behind things.
Maura and Fred, her father, were also car shopping at this time. And you're going to need to know this. I'm kind of just trying to jump through a couple of things you guys are going to need to know if you were not here for part one. But Maura and her father were car shopping again. Maura's car, the Saturn she drove, was unreliable. It should not have been driven, period. And she had just crashed her dad's car. And they were shopping for a new car. But the father took out, and it was a total of $4,000, but in $400 increments. So you guys are going to need to know that come this time that we're going to go through theories, because a lot of people had issues with the father taking out such a large amount of cash in small increments, but it's because he was not home. That's where his bank was. So he took out really enough because, as her dad said, money talks, and he wanted to just get her some type of car quickly.
Yeah, he thought he was going to be able to potentially do like a down payment or something.
Okay. Hold on, because I have two up. All right. So Saturday, February 7th, her dad arrives at UMass for the car shopping. Her dad's name is Frank. He later tells police in an interview that on his way to UMass that weekend, he stopped at several ATMs again to withdraw $400 total. That was the max, totaling $4,000. There were 10 ATM stops total. So around 6 p.m. that night, they went and looked at 2 cars. I think one car cost, what was it, like $6,000. The other cost $7,000. They said, all right, we'll come back tomorrow. We looked at both the cars. We don't have all the money that we would need on us today. So they went and they got dinner that night. They had supper at the Amherst Brewing Company. Kate, Maura's friend, calls during dinner and ends up meeting them there for a few drinks. Mallory explained all of this, that Maura's friends would love going out with Maura's dad because he would end up paying for everything.
Mm-hmm.
After dinner, Maura, Fred, and Kate go to a liquor store. Still, the details are not 100% clear whether or not Fred purchased the alcohol for them, went into the store with them, or what. But they did stop at a liquor store and they purchased alcohol. One of the items that they purchased was a box wine. You're going to need to know that. Fred is dropped off at his hotel room and Maura asks to use his car. And so they drive back and Maura uses the new Toyota Corolla for the evening. Kate, Maura, and another friend, Sarah, attend a party together at the dorms. That party is still not really known. Sarah, you want to tell them about Sarah, Mallory?
Yeah, so Sarah was Maura's friend that she had met. They both worked at the art gallery, which was one of Maura's part-time jobs. Sarah was who hosted the party. And in the podcast, her sister Julie made it a very important point that Sarah has never talked to the family. I know Tess had, I think it was Tess, when we did part 1, had mentioned potentially her not even talking to police, but that she has very much been very quiet about everything, about her friendship with Maura, about what happened the night of the party, which potentially is nothing. It actually was a party that was only about between 7 and 8 people. They were in someone's dorm room just drinking, just like the 7 or 8 of them. But till this day, she has not like talked about it, except for she did respond towards the beginning one time to Maura's dad, Fred, and had just stated, I was asleep. I don't know what happened. I was asleep, which didn't make any sense anyways, because it was a dorm room. It's not like it was an apartment where literally it's maybe 5 big steps from one side of the room to the other. So there's no way that, oh, there we go. She'd be able to be asleep on a bed when there's 8 people in the room drinking and having a good time. But when Maura's mom had asked, or Maura's dad had asked, she just said, I was asleep. I don't know, but she was hosting the party, but apparently hosting it asleep. So.
Yep. So Fred, Maura's dad, was staying at the Quality Inn on Russell Street in Hadley. And so Maura dropped her dad, Fred, off and drove Fred's Toyota Corolla to UMass. They attended this party that still we do not know if this was a massive party, if this was a party with just a handful of people. We know that Sarah is not talking. She's saying that she slept the entire time, yet you can't fit more than a handful of people in these dorm rooms. Are we to believe that, 1, you would have a party when you're sleeping, and 2, you're going to be able to sleep through all of these people in your room? I just don't, again, that doesn't mean that she had any involvement, versus it's just another little nugget of weirdness surrounding this case. So
it's unusual that she lied, because if you have nothing to hide, why are you lying about it?
Yes. And I'd also say, like, even if, say back then you were scared you would get in trouble because you were participating in some substances or drinking underage, whatever it may be, like, you're an adult now. Like, could you not talk about it? You don't remember anything?
20 years is a long time to not say anything. Think of who you were when you were 20 compared to who you are when you were 40, because that's basically the age that they are now. That's a long time to keep that to yourself, and it gives you pause wondering why that is. And that's from me, not from their family. That's just my personal opinion.
Yep. Okay. So around 3:30 a.m., Maura heads out of the party. Well, actually, no, it wasn't around 3. It was because if we're going by what her friend said that they left, if she could remember, between 1 to 2 a.m. Yet, for whatever reason, instead of just walking to her dorm, Maura gets back into her father's car and starts to drive. She was driving in the direction of where her father was staying, but why she got back into that car, why she made this decision, we will never know. We learned in part 1, and Mallory went through, that she actually did not even have an active driver's license at this point. She had to go through steps in order to get it back. But she got in that vehicle under the influence and she started to drive, and she actually got into an accident around 3:30 a.m. So what exactly happened between that window of when her friends said they left the party and the time that Maura got into the accident, we don't know. Another one of those things that we probably will never know. But Maura had left her phone back at the dorm, possibly in Sarah's room. And there was what I forgot what type of person was. I don't know if this, I don't know what you call him, but he was either with Maura or he stopped and saw the accident.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who called the police. I don't know what he was though. What was his title?
He was like a security cadet is what they had called him. I would assume it would just be like the UMass security that would like drive around on campus. And they just said that he had stumbled upon the accident and was the one that called 911 because she didn't have her phone.
And this is UMass. Now, you know, there's a lot of people who think, is there any chance that he was with her that night, or like Mallory said, driving and you just saw the accident, but it was called in. Now, for whatever reason, they did not give her a field sobriety test, nothing. They just said that in the incident report that it skidded on like sand or gravel, something.
Yeah.
And she went into the guardrail. Was it the guardrail?
It was half and half. It was the guardrail and a snowbank, because if you remember, it did snow a significant amount 2 days prior.
Mm-hmm.
Or technically 1 day prior, because it would have been Saturday night. But so yeah, it was a T intersection. She didn't stop at the stop sign to either turn left or right. She just drove straight and hit the guardrail / a snowbank.
And it was along Route 9, and it was $8,000 to $10,000 worth of damage of the car. Now, Fred was covered, and so it was only $500 out of his pocket, but that's the type of damage we're referring to here. $8,000 to $10,000 worth of damage slamming this car in. And where was she going? What was she doing? Why did she even decide to get in the car? Again, these are actions and decisions that we'll never have the answers for, unfortunately. But she got a ride in the tow truck back to her dad's motel, which was next door to the car repair. Again, she didn't have her phone on her because she had left it back at the dorms. So she used her dad's phone to call Bill, her boyfriend, in the early morning hours. According to her dad, she told her dad that she had been in an accident and she was never afraid of her dad. And on the calls over the next few days, according to Bill, she said that she had been in an accident and she was never afraid of her dad. And on the calls over the next days, I was worried about Maura after she called me crying, having just wrecked Fred's Toyota. I called Maura and her best friend to see if she was okay. Because I guess people were asking Bill, why so many calls? Why were there so many calls between you and Maura? But for Bill, I asked why I didn't try harder to see if everything was all right, given she drove to NH on Monday without telling anyone. So
And I mean, Bill had bought Maura a cell phone for Christmas that year. So just 2 months prior. So I'm sure the accessibility of speaking also was probably one of the reasons why they had talked so much that night. Was it was still a new thing to be able to kind of talk wherever you were, whenever you wanted.
And so Maura's dad did not even know Maura was back at that hotel room until the next morning when he woke up. He did not know Maura got into an accident. He did not know Maura was coming to the hotel room. He woke up around 10 a.m. and found Maura asleep in the room. Maura woke up around 10:30, and that's when she told her dad about the accident. She spent that day with her dad. She worked a 4-hour shift at UMass Art Gallery. That's when her dad called the insurance company, looked into rental cars, and he found a loaner. So Fred went to Amherst Motors around 12:30. Fred dropped Maura off at her dorm around 1 to 1:30. And then Fred returned to Bridgeport and arrived around 3:30 that day. At 8:30 p.m., Maura checks the messages, and she has her phone back at this time. Unclear if it was in Sarah's dorm room or where, but at this point she has her phone back. At 11:26 p.m., Fred talks to Maura and reminds her to pick up the accident forms in triplicate. So this is what I was talking to you about on part 1, Mallory. So not only at the time of her disappearance did she have the forms for the accident in her car, but she also had the forms that you were talking about. She had both.
Yeah, so the forms that I was talking about that they end up finding in her car too are she was caught speeding back in New Hampshire when her and Bill had gone with her family on like a camping trip up to the mountains. And so she was speeding, and after she was caught speeding, she ended up losing her license for 30 days. But the thing that she didn't realize was that not only did she have to fill out this reinstatement form for her license, but it had to be done in person. So up to this point, she had not been back up there to like have the ability to actually turn these forms in person, which is why she did not have an active license. But those forms for the reinstatement were also found in her car with the accident forms that MJ's talking about.
And so this is Maura's sister, Kathleen. She is the one who had called her when she was at work and told her about the relapse and what caused, apparently what caused Maura to have that freak out. This is Maura and Bill. If you weren't, again, there for part 1, just so you could have an idea. Look how beautiful Maura is. Again, she had a smile, a gorgeous smile.
She just radiates. Like,
Yeah.
her whole aura is amazing.
So these are just a couple of photos of her and Bill.
Which also I will state, just because you were just showing the picture of Kathleen, Kathleen also has passed away.
Yes.
And she actually died of the exact same cancer that their mother died of years prior.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
So crazy. Right. So
I had forgotten what he looks like. He looks different, and
I'll show you a
pictures and
today
other
photo too. Yeah, he
Oh,
looks
yeah, I wanna
much
see it.
different. Yeah, well, I'll show.
He definitely was dating up with her. She's gorgeous.
So at 11:26 p.m., Fred talked to Maura and he reminded her to pick up the accident forms. Okay. Maura agreed to call Monday at 8 p.m. to go over the forms. Just after midnight on Monday morning, February 9th, Maura conducted a MapQuest search of the Berkshires and Burlington, Vermont on her personal computer. Now, this is one of the places that her family frequented growing up. Now, why she was Googling this, we don't know. Very interesting, though. She made a call just after midnight seeking information on renting a condo in Bartlett, New Hampshire, an area she frequented with her family. But she is reported as staying up till 4 a.m. looking at different rentals in New Hampshire, but she does not book anything.
And one of the rentals is, like you had said, one that her and her family had gone to, but it even goes a step further, and the person that she had talked to was someone that she knew and was familiar because of how often her family went up there. And even though this person was one of the last people to actually have a conversation with Maura, it wasn't until just within, I think, the last few years that the police even actually talked to her for the first time, which is crazy.
Yep. It's so crazy that they did not make contact with any of the people that Maura's calling these places, and they didn't even make contact with them to see, hey, what did she call about? What were they asking for? What was she asking for? Nothing. It was her sister that eventually made contact to find out nobody ever made contact with that woman. And too much time had passed at that point for the woman to even remember. And thank you so much, Big L, for being a member for 5 months.
They didn't even ask, like, did she look for one room, 2 rooms, double bed, king bed?
Right.
Like, is she wanting to be alone? Is she planning a guest? That was never asked by anyone in Ellie that we know of.
Christina. Thank you.
Mm-mm.
Right. So she's conducting a map search quest of the Berkshires, and at 3:32 a.m., Maura emailed her nursing cohort. She searched MapQuest for Burlington and Bartlett and researches the effects of alcohol on pregnancy. That is not abnormal. That she was a nursing student, and that was part of what I guess her assignment was. Okay.
Yeah,
But
they
she
were
was
right within the maternity part of studying, so.
Right. So she was up till 4 a.m., and that's when she finished working on her personal computer. There are rumors that she made additional searches about alcohol and pregnancy after finishing her schoolwork, but again, those are just rumors. At 1 p.m., oh, I'm sorry, I jumped forward. So at 12:55 p.m., now we're at p.m., again, she calls about a condo rental in Bartlett, New Hampshire. Notice this discrepancy. Did she both do an internet search and make a phone call, or has information been altered as the years have passed? Because there were internet searches, but now there's a phone call. So is it both? Is it one or the other? One of the things that are unclear. But at 1 p.m., Maura sends an email to Bill. And it states that she doesn't want to really talk to anybody, but she will call him later. And she signs it, "Love ya, stud." At 1:13 p.m., Maura calls Aaron O'Neill, who is a classmate, about returning clothes. So apparently Maura and Aaron carpooled back and forth to the nursing program, because one of the requirements of that nursing program is that you have to have a vehicle. So she was at some point in the car, needed to borrow clothes. But I really think that this is a key point too. So this is the events of the day. She makes sure to call her and is like, hey, I can return these clothes. Apparently, Aaron said, listen, no rush whenever you get a chance, right? All right. Well, I'm sorry, I'm flipping back and forth.
You're good.
So the exact email was Monday, February 9th, 2004 to Bill. Subject was, hey, I love you more, stud. I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking too much of anyone. I promised to call today, though. Love you, Maura. Then at 1:13, she calls Aaron O'Neill about returning clothes, and she was apparently crying. Aaron Murphy was in Patterson, and at 1:24 p.m., Maura emails her teachers at the UMass Nursing School and her boss at the local art gallery, and she makes up a death in the family. And I need to get your guys' thoughts on this, because she emails them and she's like, listen, I need to take a break for a bit. I have a death in the family, and so I need to go attend to that. There was no death in the family. The family has no idea what that's about.
Yeah, and I believe too that she specifically said like she would be missing class for 1 week. So she did have a time frame on it, which is also interesting because it was not an indefinite amount of time. I believe it said 1 week. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. I don't know if
No,
Tess or
because
Shay.
that was what she was also looking for the rental, was a week rental.
Yeah, okay.
So it seems to be something that was planned for a week's time.
Yeah.
So that's at 1:30. She sends that email. At 2:05, Maura calls 1-800-GO-STOW, which is a reservation information for Stowe, Vermont. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing Stowe correct. I think it's pronounced Stowe.
Sounds right.
But also, when she emailed her teachers letting her know that there was a death in the family, she did say that she would be out of town for several days due to a death in the family. Okay. Then the 1-800-GO-STOW. And then at 2:18, so she's doing these things bam, 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 like kind of in an order. 2:18, Maura calls Bill and leaves a message along the lines of, I love you, I miss you, I want to talk. At 3 p.m., Maura leaves campus in the vehicle that needs replacing. So she goes in the Saturn that she is not supposed to drive. This car is not reliable. It was only running on 3 cylinders. If you know anything about a 4-cylinder car that's only running on 3-cylinder, it is struggling for any type of energy. Like, it is, you're moving slow and it's not a smooth ride. But for whatever reason, and her dad expressed to her, really only for emergency purpose do I want you ever driving that vehicle. But really do not. Don't do it. So why she decided to get back into the Saturn and drive it, we don't know. But she was very well aware that it was not reliable and she couldn't get far with it. Okay. In the tailpipe Loki, but we'll get into it. So Maura is seen at around 2:30 with beer cans, recycling them. And she got about, if I remember correctly, like $2 and change or $3 and change worth of cans back. I don't know if you remember how much.
Yeah, something like that. It was like 5 cents. I know they said it was 5 cents a can, and she had turned in 79 cans, so whatever that would equal.
Okay. Around 3 p.m., Erin, her nursing friend, received a knock on her door. Erin was taking a nap. She will forever regret not getting up and hearing that knock to answer the door, because she later found that Maura had left those clothes that she said she would be returning outside of her door. I want you to remember that Aaron said earlier, no rush, like whenever, but I do think it's interesting that Maura made it a point. No, I'm returning them today. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's something. I don't know. So at 3:15 p.m., Maura is seen on CCTV withdrawing cash from an ATM. Oh, let me pull those up. She's seen withdrawing $280 from an ATM, leaving about $20 left in her account. These are the still shots from that CCTV. It's very eerie, in my opinion, to look at the last moments that you have of somebody. And you try to observe, and I've looked at these, and I try to make out what her face looks like. Does she seem in distress?
Did she look like she was crying? I
Right.
tried to notice that too.
$280, Rainbow Mom. She had $20 left. Basically, she had $300 in her account. She took out $280. I'm sure she couldn't have taken out $300 without an overdraft happening or something. So she took out what she had, $280, and there was about $20 left over in the account. Okay.
And mind you, this was 2004.
Yes.
She in 82. She was born in 82. She would have turned 22 that same year.
It seems that way, Debbie Doodles, but then we get into what happened. You know what I mean? That's why this is such a bizarre one, is that it's not just when she disappears in those events, it's leading up to it that makes it appear like this was a planned thing, but then everything points to not planned. It's her boyfriend did cheat in the past. You want to explain that again, Mallory?
Yeah, so we don't know exactly how many times. In the podcast, Julie does touch on one time that she became aware of, and she kind of was like, you deserve better, kind of like what you would say to your sister normally. When a significant other would cheat, be like, you deserve better than that. But Julie said, they got back together. Maura said she wanted to work through it. So I kind of she just went with the flow. They did end up finding a note in her dorm room, which was not actually a note. It was a printed off email from Bill from about 2 years prior, apologizing for infidelity in their relationship. But we don't know if that instance is the same one that Julie was previously talking about, if they were different instances. But at this point, he had infidelity, but I don't think it was something that they were currently. It's not like it was something that happened and she's running off because it happened, at least that we are aware of.
They were both in their early 20s. He was in Oklahoma and she was in Massachusetts. That's hard for anyone.
Yeah. And also, just to be clear, he's been very cooperative with the family, answers questions, and it's not like he's this hidden suspect or anything. I think it's just the dynamics of
a hard thing
for life.
Right.
Yeah, and I believe him, his parents, his mentors, which I had mentioned where Maura stayed when she went to visit him, they all flew in to help search for her at some point during this. So it was not something that even he or his family or anything, it was a serious relationship between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. He's a good, solid guy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was drinking water. So these are those CCT moments. So she withdraws the $280 from the ATM. That was at 3:15 p.m. At 3:43, she is seen leaving a liquor store with $40 worth of alcohol, which included the ingredients for, as her sister says, her favorite drink. I don't remember what it's called, but it included Bailey's, Kahlua, and vodka. I don't remember.
Russian.
White Russians.
Like the White Russian.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
a drinker. So the timestamp on the receipt from the liquor store is 3:43 p.m. So at 4:37 p.m., Maura checks her voicemail. At 7:27 p.m.,
Wait, is it that the last time her phone connects?
yes,
Or
that
activity?
she
Okay.
used her phone.
Okay.
At that, it's documented that Maura used her phone. And she calls her dorm voicemail from her cell phone. 7:27 p.m. And I'm trying to see what visual I'm going to pull up for this. Okay. Because now we're about to get into the accident. I guess I could. All right, I'll start there. So the route that Maura was taking was along this route, and this is where the accident occurred. At 7:27 p.m., Faith Westman calls 911, and it's a 1 minute and 18-second call. And Faith heard a loud crash, and she looked out her window, and she saw Maura's Saturn. I'm going to pull this right up. Hold on. Okay. Be this. I think this would be the one. Okay. This is Faith Westman's 911 dispatch log. And it says, Grafton County Dispatcher, Marsh, how can I help you? And Faith says, yes, we apparently have a car that has gone off the road here outside of our home. Dispatch says, okay, is anybody hurt? Faith says, I have not gone outside to investigate. Dispatch says, okay. I want you guys to realize there is redactions here. We'll get into that. Dispatch says, you're in Bath, correct? Faith says, well, actually, no, in Haverville. I'm on the weathered barn. Dispatch says, oh, you're the weather barn. Okay. Then they say, Grafton, this is 911. Show it as redacted. And they're like, okay, very good. This is Faith. Yes. I'm speaking with. Yes. And is your phone number XYZ? Correct. And your address is XYZ? Right. Okay. I'll be sending an officer. And they said around the corner from the barn, after the barn. Faith says, yes. There is another redaction. Dispatch says, very good. I'll be sending an officer. And Faith says, yeah. And dispatch says, okay. Faith says, okay, thanks. Dispatch says, thanks, Faith. Faith says, yeah, bye-bye. Okay. Is Faith the one that her husband also was there? Who was looking from another window? I think it was.
He was there.
Yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yeah, because the other girl is one that drove past, didn't see.
Right. Witness.
And then the other guy is the bus driver, so that would have to be.
I also think it's a good thing to note that this case is still active. It's not a cold case, so some of the information is limited, and not till recently did the family find out a few additional details.
And the family still doesn't have a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
They've tried for a long time to get the full files, and they have not been able to.
Well,
Yeah.
so those redacted parts, we now know Faith believed she saw a man smoking a cigarette. That's the redacted part. Now, her husband was also in the house and he was looking through another window. He does not recall seeing a man smoking a cigarette. He thought it was an interior dome light that was on. Okay. So just keep that in mind, and why they chose to redact that, I don't know. So that was at 7:27, Faith's 911 call. 7:29, they are dispatched. 7:42, we have Butch, who is a neighbor, who is heading home. He is a bus driver, and he sees Maura and her crashed vehicle. And he stops and he asks her, do you need any assistance? Are you okay? Do you want to come back and stay? Maura said that she already called AAA. Butch knows there is no reception in this area. He invites Maura to come back and stay at his house while waiting. She declines. Butch goes home, and at 7:42, again, 7:27 is when Faith's 911 call is made. 7:42 is when Butch calls 911 after several unsuccessful attempts, and his call lasts 3 minutes. And so I'm going to pull up his dispatch now. So it says Hanover dispatcher. He says Butch Atwood. Good evening. Is this Grafton County? Hi. Okay. My name's Butch Atwood. I'm out of redacted road here, redacted by the Weathered Red Barn. You got a single car motor vehicle accident. He, and this comes up, from Julie, he hit a pine tree. Airbag is deployed. Both of Maura's airbags were deployed. What town is this in? Woodsville. Dispatch, hello. Dispatch, this is 911. I'm sorry, I was talking to one of my supervisors. Okay, so the information again was, yep, by the Weathered Red Barn in North Haverhill. Any injury? Butch says, she's shaken up. So now he says she's shaken up. No blood that I could see, but the airbag was deployed. Heavy damage. It's right on the bad corner, right at the Weathered Red Barn there. It's about 3.4 miles from the junction of 302 on 112, or the wild, and I don't know how to pronounce that word, Aminosuk Road. Same road. Dispatch asks, okay. Butch says it's a single female. All right, what's your name, sir? My name's Butch Atwood. Okay, and phone number. He gives the information. So it says, all right, what happened to all the phone lines into Grafton? Dispatch says, I have no idea. We haven't been told anything. Butch says, all right, everyone I rang didn't go through. Because again, multiple attempts Butch made. They said, okay, thank you, bye. So let me show you who Butch is real quick. This is Butch Atwood. So again, he's a bus driver. He was coming home. He sees Maura. So that's now at least 3 people who have seen Maura. Faith, her husband, and then Butch. Okay? Butch returns home. It's not far. So at 7:40, sorry, go ahead.
I think if you're not familiar with this story, just good to note that she's kind of on the outskirts of a small town.
Yeah.
Very, very small town.
So it goes out as Faith Westman called, vehicle in the ditch right on sharp turn after the weathered barn, but can see a man in vehicle smoking a cigarette. And that's the part that they redacted. So let me make sure I have that up for you guys to show you guys. This is Butch. And then where did it go? Okay. At 1927, Faith Westman called to advantage of a vehicle in the ditch right on sharp turn after the weathered barn. Unknown if injured, but can see a man in vehicle smoking a cigarette. Was eastbound right Route 112, but ended up in westbound ditch facing westbound. So that's what it was. When Faith looked out her window, she saw Maura's very damaged Saturn facing the opposite direction in oncoming traffic. Hey, Earth.
Right.
Not saying Butch did anything, Karen Ann. Just, I'm not accusing anybody. I'm just laying out to you really kind of like what I picked up from Julie's podcast and what I know. We don't know what happened.
Yeah, because allegedly they believe that they only searched one direction when they could have, also spread out in other directions too. So there's no telling. And she's a fast runner.
Mm-hmm. So keep in mind, it was about 7:30 that Butch comes across Maura. Maura's in her car with the lights off, facing the wrong direction on the road. Now, with that being said, Butch's story changed a little bit, apparently. At times, he said Maura was in her vehicle. At other times, he said that Maura was out of his vehicle. Right, Mallory?
Yeah.
I think that's what Julie said.
Yeah, and I think too, because of the time frame of everything, that there's still kind of a lot that happens and like that gets a little bit confusing as well. So we have these two, and then there's the one more that I assume you'll go over.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think that the last one is the most interesting out of the three.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion.
So as you can see, the front end of her car has significant damage. The airbag was deployed in the steering wheel and the passenger seat. This model and car is made to where somebody does not need to be sitting in the passenger seat for the airbag to deploy. Just keep that in mind. The front of the windshield was shattered. We'll get into it, but it is alleged that they believe it was something from inside the vehicle that was an interior shatter versus something outside of the vehicle striking it.
And that is wine, not blood. And they did test the glass on the inside, and there was no human blood or like hair or anything like that. So they do not believe that at least there were no signs that she had actually hit her head on that. That it was just something else loose in the vehicle that potentially hit the windshield from the inside.
With lots of other evidence showing that there was wine and red all over the car.
Yeah.
Correct. So 7:30, Butch has eyes on Maura. She's in her car, lights off, facing the wrong direction. He is home by 7:43, and he is on the phone with 911. 3 minutes later, because again, they were already dispatched from Faith's call. 7:46, the first officer responds to the scene. Maura is not there, and the car is locked. That was the last time anybody set eyes on Maura. officially, police get there. First officer arrives. Maura's gone. Her car is sitting there. Doors are shut and locked. In that small time frame, which I'll read again, 7:27. Sorry, go ahead.
3 minutes.
Well, no, not really 3 minutes. 7:27 is when Faith Westman makes her 911 call. She heard the crash and boom, looks out, calls at 7:27. 7:29 is when they go and they get dispatched. 7:30 is when Butch has his interaction with Maura. He set eyes on Maura. He spoke to Maura. 7:42, Butch is on the phone with 911. 7:46, they arrive. She is gone. So from 7:30-ish to 7:43, Maura is gone, nowhere to be found, and the car is locked and abandoned. We're dealing with such a small window of time here. So at 7:46, it's logged by Anthony Stiles, and they run Maura's license plate, and they find out that the car is owned by Fred Murray of Weymouth, which is Maura's. It was actually Maura's dad, but for some reason I don't remember why. Do you remember, Mallory, why they made an attempt on her grandfather?
I think that they all have the same name. Like, I think it's a passed down name. So they happened to just call, they just looked up the name, called the first number that popped up, but it was her grandfather's number. Are you going to bring up the last
Witness
person?
A?
The what?
Witness A?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at 7:54 is a bolo going out that a 5'7" woman, be on the lookout for a 5'7" woman on foot to neighboring fire stations. This becomes a big issue because if Maura's car was locked and they weren't able to make entry into it, how did they so quickly know what her height was? How did they put out a bolo for a 5'7" woman? I know that Julie mentions that.
Yeah, and she says, like, even when they got the person who it belonged to, it belonged to a man. So someone had to have potentially seen her to be able to say 5'7".
The only thing I could think of, and I don't know if it's been cleared, I know she didn't have a valid driver's license, but what if she had an older driver's license in her car? And that's just something that hasn't been released.
Well, that plus I wonder if she'd already potentially filled out either the accident form or the reinstatement form, because if she had filled out the reinstatement form, it would have, hair, eye color, height, weight, all on there, because it would have all the information for her new license.
Good point.
Yeah. But we don't know.
Okay. So there's actually another witness in this equation. And for the longest time, she went by Witness A. So if we're going by the three witnesses, there are two people that hear a 705 scanner call, a car in the ditch on Swiftwater Road, driver left in private vehicle, law enforcement, fire department, and EMS called back to the station. Witness A is the witness that I haven't mentioned to you guys yet. So we have Faith and we have Butch, and now we have Witness A. Witness A leaves her work in Woodsville around 7:15, taking Swiftwater Road east towards 1 well. A lives in Lincoln. At about 7:20, witness A is passed by a police SUV vehicle number 001. And she remembers it because it just stood out to her. She drives an SUV, the police vehicle is an SUV, and she remembers the numbers 001 on it. So this is at 7:20. A is passed by 001 SUV cruiser heading east towards 112. The blue lights were on, but no siren. Witness A loses sight of 001. At 7:23, 3 minutes later, witness A is on 112 headed east and is passed again for the second time by 001, also going east towards WBC. Again, witness A loses sight of the cop car. Witness A arrives at WBC to the SUV 001 parked nose to nose with a dark car, which would be Maura's, but does not notice any people by the vehicles. Witness A proceeds east and calls home from Beaver Pond, as always, when in range. That was at 7:26. Then at 7:27, Faith has her 911 call after hearing a thud and an acceleration, and she remains on the line with 911. At 7:33, Butch Atwood arrives on scene, pulls up beside the Saturn, and blocks Faith's view. Butch Atwood is there about 3 to 4 minutes. He drives home, and his wife calls 911 at 7:43. He is outside in his bus at this point. He has a good view. 7:46, Smith arrives on scene and is driving number 002 sedan. Nobody is at the scene at this point. Smith goes to the Westman and Atwood residence to ask where the girl is. At 7:50, Susan Champy, witness B, left work in Lincoln and at 7:20 and arrived on scene at 7:50 and noticed number 002 sedan parked near the Saturn. The passenger side door of the Saturn was open into the westbound lane. So I know this is confusing and like a lot of moving pieces, but what does this mean? It means that there is witness A who apparently saw an SUV cop car that shouldn't have been there yet, because the first officer to arrive on scene shouldn't have been, and it's officially logged, at 7:46 p.m. So how is it that at 7:26, she sees 001's SUV parked nose to nose, yet by the time the next cop car comes, there's nobody else on scene? You guys could explain a little bit better. Feel free.
No, I think you explained it well. The main thing of that too, that comes to my mind just with this particular instance, is that we also find out, which I don't know if you were going to say, but the person who was driving that 001 police car is not the person that the police car belonged to. They were borrowing it, which also I think can bring a lot of questions into this as to the potential of like what's going on if this is like a person who doesn't normally have this car, is not saying that they stopped to help, but they did file things like before and after. So it is very weird.
It has a lot of power in that department.
Yeah.
Right. So 7:25, Maura's Saturn zooms around the weathered barn corner and spins out and crashes Tim and Faith Westman hear it and go to their window to check it out. 7:27, after a momentary assessment of the accident scene from their window, Faith Westman dials the Grafton County 911 dispatcher. 7:29, Faith ends her 911 call, and Rhonda Marsh dispatches out Cecil Smith, who is the first officer apparently on scene, after completing a call with Faith Westman. 7:30, Butch Atwood arrives at the accident scene in his bus. 7:32, Butch leaves the accident scene en route to his home several hundred feet east on Route 112. 7:33, Faith Westman witnesses the flurry of activity around the trunk of the Saturn, which I don't know what the flurry of activity, what that's implying there.
Maybe put a rag in the pipe.
No, because the dad clarifies what that is. I'm not sure what that means, but 7:34, Butch enters his house after parking his school bus in the driveway. 7:35, the Haverhill police cruiser SUV 001 arrives at the scene. The 7:35 area, it says that this is the 4-minute window of opportunity during which Maura vanished. These yellow. 4 minutes she had. At 7:37, witness A passes the accident scene and witnesses the police cruiser SUV 001 nose to nose with the Saturn. 7:39, after discussing with his wife what he just experienced at the accident scene, Butch calls 911 and is connected to Hanover Dispatch. 7:40, Rhonda Marsh enters the notes from Faith Westman's 911 call into the system. 7:42, Butch ends his 911 call, and Haverhill police cruiser SUV 001 departs the scene, allegedly. 7:43, Hanover Dispatch informs Rhonda Marsh of the Grafton County Dispatch about Atwood's call. 7:44, Rhonda Marsh's calls the Atwood resident and speaks to Butch Atwood's common-law wife. The call lasts 1 minute. Butch has gone back out to his bus to do some paperwork. 7:45, Butch Atwood, now sitting in his bus, sees Cecil Smith, the first officer on scene, arrive. Cecil Smith arrives at the scene in his cruiser sedan 002. 7:46, Cecil calls in to Rhonda Marsh at the Grafton County Dispatch. Rhonda Dispatch informs Cecil that vehicle occupant is a female. 7:48, Faith and Tim Westman answer their door, and Cecil Smith says, "Where's the girl?" So what the hell happened in that 4-minute window that Maura completely vanishes off the face of the earth?
I just wanted to clarify that Julie said in her interview with the True Crime Garage, I think it was, I just looked at my notes, that the flurry could have been her putting the thing in the tailpipe because that's what her dad told her to do. Just wanted to clarify that that's where I read that. I checked my notes quick. So it was on one of the podcasts she was on, not on her podcast.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you. So to the left is Cecil Smith, and to the right is John Monaghan. Cecil Smith, the first officer, according to the documents, on the scene. Okay. So, all right.
I've never actually seen pictures of them.
I tried to I'm a visual person. I'd like to see what they look like. You know what I mean? I'd like to see what they look like because it helps me remember who they are.
Yeah.
He's on that Oxygen documentary. Cecil is.
Yeah.
All right. So, from the police perspective, and noted, at 19:30, I responded to the report of a car into a tree. When I arrived, I noted the above vehicle parked facing west in the eastbound lane of Route 112. The vehicle was locked and there was no one in the area. I spoke to a witness who told me there was a young female behind the wheel and there were no other people in the vehicle. He spoke with the female who told him not to call police. Evidence at the scene indicated the vehicle had been eastbound and had gone off the roadway, struck some trees, spun around, and came to the rest facing the wrong way in the eastbound lane. The driver's side of the windshield was cracked and both front airbags had deployed. In plain sight behind the driver's seat of the vehicle, I could see a box of Franzilla wine. Now, if you guys remember, that's the exact box wine that Maura had purchased when her dad and her friends stopped at the liquor store. Not the most recent liquor store visit, the first one with the dad.
It's Franzia.
Thank you. I'm not a drinker. I don't know.
You just made it like a whole ass Godzilla wine.
Sorry.
I used to drink that out of the back of my Mustang in college, so I know what that is.
It's for
I was just going to let her go with it.
Jadeism.
So there was a box of, how do you say it again?
Franzia
wine. I could also see red liquid on the driver's side door and ceiling of the car. I made a search of the roadway in the area of the accident. I was assisted with fire, EMS personnel, and a resident of the area. The driver was not located. A later search of the vehicle indicated the driver was Maura Murray. When the vehicle was towed from the scene by Lavorie's, I recovered a Coke bottle that contained a red liquid with a strong alcoholic odor. It was entered into as case number XYZ. So then I have this. All right. Cecil. When I got to the scene, wait, hold on. No, I'm sorry. This is not Cecil. This was John whatever his name is. So when I got to the scene, I pulled up and Cecil Smith was already there. And I saw the car kind of smashed into the tree on the side of the road. And I rolled down my passenger side window and said, "Hey, what's up?" And he goes, "I don't know. There's a box of wine in here, and it looks like she's been filling up a soda bottle with wine." And so I said, "Okay, do you need me to do anything?" And he said, "Well, Butch," I believe Butch is the name of the bus driver, who had said that he had stopped to check on her. His checking up in the mountain lake areas. And I said, "Well, I'll look around and I'll check some of the back roads." So I did. I drove, and if you want the play-by-play I can give you, I reread my reports. So my path of travel, I turned around and I went back towards Swiftwater. I took a right onto what's called Porter Road and checked this area called the Big Eddy. It's a parking lot. In the meantime, a lot of people swim there. And then I took, what is the name of the road? Will you excuse me for a second? And that's John Monaghan. Sorry, I didn't remember what his last name was. John Monaghan. So let me stop. And I have to figure out a better way that I could store everything, because Facebook Messenger I have to keep going out and coming in, going out and coming in. So the Haverhill Police Department press release on February 9, 2004, Sergeant Cecil Smith responded to a reported one-vehicle accident on Route 112. Upon arrival at the accident scene, the sergeant found an abandoned vehicle, a 1996 black Saturn sedan. I cannot say with a mass registration, that state. A search of the area by Haverhill Police, State Police, and EMS officials did not locate the driver. Witnesses at the scene reported seeing a lone female with no apparent injury who appeared impaired due to alcohol consumption. When asked if she needed help or the police to respond, she replied, no. The female left the scene prior to the arrival of emergency personnel. A subsequent search of the vehicle indicates that the operator was Maura Murray, 21 years old, of Hanson. She was last seen wearing jeans and a dark-colored coat. Miss Murray is a white female with brown shoulder-length hair and blue eyes, approximately 5'7" tall and weighing about 120 pounds. An intensive search for Murray is presently being conducted by the Haverhill Police Department, New Hampshire Fish and Game, and the New Hampshire State Police, Troop F, as well as the New Hampshire State Police helicopter. It is believed that Murray may be en route to the Kankamagus Highway area. Murray is listed as an endangered and possibly schmooshmidal at this time, which the family did not appreciate that. The Haverhill Police Department is requesting the help of anyone that may have seen a female matching Murray's description on the night of February 9th, 2004, to present on or near Route 112 after the hour of 7 p.m. And then this is the report.
Oh, I was going to say, I looked at my notes and it was actually her brother that was called, not the grandfather.
I swear they said that in the
They said grandpa in the podcast
because I guess is the
is a family name.
Yeah, is the family name. So they called originally because
he's deceased.
Yes,
All
but he's
three of them have
deceased.
Fred, right?
Yeah, they're all
Okay.
Fred.
Yeah, they're all Fred.
Because I thought it was two, and then they're like, but he was deceased, so then they went to the next one or something. I'm not exactly sure.
Wait,
because I re-listened to it today, and I thought what Shay thought, and then I heard it.
So they tried to call the grandfather first.
Deceased grandfather, yeah.
Was deceased.
But then what I was reading was that they got a hold of the brother.
Yeah. I don't know if they just never actually made it to the dad.
Yeah, maybe because he was out of town, right?
Yeah, maybe it was
I don't know. It was just on
grandfather,
my mind.
and then went to the next Fred, which then would have been the brother, or something. I mean, they're all Fred Murray, so.
Yeah,
no idea.
this whole thing is strange to me. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, it totally.
Yeah, no, it is. So this is the report. Okay, and I'm gonna get back into the car, but this is the accident sketch. Vehicle at final rest. Trees. Tire impressions in snow. Okay, Route 112. Trying to see if there's anything that I really no, I kind of went over that. Okay, so then I want to show you guys all right, so let's go back a second to the car vehicle. Jesus, I can't even talk. The car photos. Okay, this is what her car looked like. This is what it looked like once she got into the accident. Both airbags were deployed. As you can see, the one is busting through the steering wheel. That is cracked. You heard us mention that Franzia, I don't remember how to say it again. The Franzia wine, that's actually the red liquid. It was all over the Franzia wine.
Which it makes me wonder if both airbags exploded, if that boxes of the front seat, like, could it have made it explode everywhere? Was there any left in the box?
Yeah, I would like to know how much was left.
I'd just be kind of curious.
It is weird how high it cracked, Harlot, but that's why they're like, it appears that it was cracked from the inside.
but like we said, they did test it and it did not have the potential of like having any of like her DNA, because I know sometimes you can see higher ones like that, like if they're not wearing a seatbelt or something and their head hits it. But they were saying no, they did testing on that crack from the inside and it did not have any of like her DNA in it. So
Mhm. And she did, Becky, but she also bought that box of wine when her and her dad and her friends stopped at the liquor store. So she had that already in her car. Now I'm going to go through with you guys what else was in her vehicle at the time that they opened it and looked through it.
And when we went over on the first episode, like her friends and family said that it wasn't like uncommon for her to have like a weekend getaway to relax, go to the mountains, blow off some steam. But this just seems a little bit more coordinated. And from what we could tell, was supposed to be a week.
So again, for context, this is where it happened. Okay. This is from the newspaper. This county road, about 1 mile east of Swiftwater, was the scene of Murray's car accident. She apparently lost control. Okay. Oh, no, that's the next part. See, Mallory's all organized with the Prezia thingy, whatever it's called. I'm jumping back and forth.
yeah, but you're coming with all the pictures and everything like that. I only had the pictures of Maura, so I think this is still helpful. I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks. This is the cops outside of Butch Atwood home. See, there's his bus talking with him.
And they said, like, I think when he went to go, like, look for her or whatever, he was driving, what, a Bronco? Is that right?
No, he was driving his... Oh, what? When he went back out, you mean?
Yeah, I think he had a Bronco.
I'm not exactly sure, actually.
Checking notes. Be right back.
Okay, now let me get the car. Okay, here we go. All right. So what was within Maura's car when she abandoned it? When they looked inside, they found an open can of sky blue malt liquor in the front seat. In the back was a suitcase filled with clothes, a stuffed monkey, and I showed you guys, well, I showed it on part 1, the stuffed monkey. I think it was the same monkey that she had tied. I'm not sure. But a stuffed monkey and a diamond necklace that her boyfriend, Bill, had given to her. 2 textbooks and another book, Not Without Peril, an account of people who died climbing New Hampshire's Mount Washington, bookmarked at a chapter titled A Question of Life or Death. And we'll talk about that too when we get into the theories. Black gloves. Maura's dad claims that police gave their search dogs a new pair of gloves found in the back seat of the car but never worn as a scent for Maura. Instead, something that would have been more identifiable, like her running shoes. So Bill had apparently just given Maura these black gloves for Christmas. Did she ever wear them? Would they even have enough of her scent on them for a dog to pick it up? An empty beer bottle was in the back seat. Fred said there was an empty beer bottle found in Maura's car. He was told by others that the bottle was in the back seat and the rear driver's side window was open a crack. Perhaps someone was in the back seat of Maura's car at some point. There was insurance forms. Murray, on the day of the accident, had picked up insurance forms related to an accident that she had on February 7th. Murray was going to call her father the night of February 9th to have him help her fill out the insurance forms. Those forms, according to Rausch, were found in Murray's car along with school books, clothing, and expensive jewelry. Not Without Peril, the book, was on the back seat. Specifically on the back seat was a book written by Nicholas Howe titled Not Without Perils. The book is about tragedies regarding search and rescues in the White Mountains. A 3x5 card with directions found inside the book in a suitcase. A sky blue cooler was found in the front seat. When they looked inside, they found an open can of sky blue malt liquor in the front seat. A damaged box of wine behind the driver's seat. In plain view behind the driver's seat of the vehicle, I could see a box of Franzia wine. I could also see red liquid on the driver's side door and ceiling of the car. In plain sight behind the driver's seat of the vehicle, I could see a box of the Franzia wine. I could also see red liquid on the driver's side door and ceiling of the car, the officer writes in the report. Before the car was towed, the officer recovered a Coke bottle that contained a red liquid with a strong alcoholic odor. A box of wine, it says it multiple times, and it says, there you go, Shay, a near empty box of wine was found inside. Scaranza also said when Murray left the Amherst campus, she had with her a box of wine and bottles of vodka, Kahlua, and Bailey's Irish Cream. The box of wine, of which most had been spilled, was found in the car, but some of the other bottles were not found. Also, according to Elena Murray, a member of the extended Murray family who manages the website, a damaged box of Franzia wine was said to be in the passenger seat, but Smith's accident report states that the wine was in the back of the car. An emergency kit was in the trunk. A rag was in the tailpipe. A 2-liter bottle underneath the car on top of the snow was a Coke bottle with some red liquid in it that smelled like an alcoholic beverage. In the back seat, there was the suitcase with clothes, a stuffed monkey, a diamond necklace, 2 textbooks, and a 17 magazine. So, a summary of the rag in the tailpipe. When first responders, EMS, came to the scene, they discovered a rag in the exhaust pipe. It has since been clarified that Fred, Maura's dad, had suggested if she ever were to use this car for an emergency purpose, because it was on 3 cylinders and it was in really bad shape, and I guess the exhaust set out a lot of smoke, she was going to get pulled over immediately. He said you could put a rag in the tailpipe for a temporary fix. However, it seems to have changed the nature of the investigation, and it has led many theories about sabotage. The rag was white, like a kitchen hand towel size. Julie Murray. A white hospital towel torn in half. Fred identified it as coming from the emergency kit in the trunk. It was said to be put there when Fred drove the Saturn, and it was his habit to put these rags in car emergency kits. It was first noticed by EMS, who alerted Cecil Smith. Dick Guy's EMS partner noted it shortly after their arrival at 7:56. Dick Guy then pointed it out to Cecil once he returned to the scene. Dick describes it as like a dish towel, and it was stuffed in it, and it was hanging out about 8 to 10 inches, or so not quite to the ground yet. Fred had suggested this as a short-term fix for hiding the exhaust. Fred said, "Do not drive this car, you will get pulled over. Her car lost a cylinder smoke blowing out the back. But if you see the police, if you have to get by them, you could put a rag in the tailpipe, and it might get you past the police on the side of the road. Going by you might make it, you might not. Going by you might make it, you might not. It is unknown when Maura put it in the exhaust pipe, if Maura did. In interviews, the Westmans describe a flurry of activity at the trunk after Butch drove off. The rag could have been put in at that time. What does it mean? If Maura put the rag in the tailpipe after Butch drove off, It could provide evidence that she was hoping to drive away from the scene. Other theories? Initially, the rag seemed to spur theories by law enforcement and first responders of sabotage or schmooshmide. Later, notwithstanding Fred's advice, others have considered it might relate to sabotage. Now, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
In what aspect? I think, and her dad actually speaks on it in the podcast. You can actually hear it in his own words, and he just says, like, even if you put this in here, like, the likelihood of the car dying or something like that is not it, or it's going to happen. He's like, he mostly told it to her so that way if she needed to use it to drive from like one side of campus to the other, and it was a short-term fix where she wouldn't necessarily be stuck anywhere at any point in time. So I'm wondering if she potentially did just put it in there at the end to stop the police from coming, or if people saw black smoke, they would have thought that the crash could have potentially been worse than it was. And then if she really was trying to avoid the police, or something like that due to the alcohol or just in general, the black smoke would have made it a lot faster to get there. I don't think it was anything nefarious or for her to harm herself. I just think it was bad advice and she did it, but I think she was just following what her dad said. Like, if you put it in there now, then they're not going to look at it later, or hopefully it doesn't get ruined, I guess.
What was interesting is her dad also said eventually when he did go to the tow shop, the car started right up.
Yep.
I found that really interesting. One started right up. Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I guess I kind of always thought that, she's scathed by with not getting in trouble for quite a few, things that people may get a bigger punishment for or get scolded by their parents, if not law enforcement. And I always just thought like she put it in there and then maybe, could have tried to hide or run away because she saw that somebody was going to call the cops and didn't want them coming because she had alcohol in the car. I don't know. I've had thoughts about that. So my thought was like, did she put that in there temporarily thinking she'd come back because she just didn't want to get police attention,
So at this point, right, she's had multiple car accidents, drinking multiple times while driving. She had a large amount of alcohol in that vehicle. It appears that she may have been drinking at that point. Was that a fear? Was that a concern? But why abandon? Because she had just gotten into an accident after drinking right before that. And she didn't abandon then. Maybe there wasn't an opportunity. I don't know. But what would make her book at this time?
I was going to say, though, I will say Maura did claim that she had stopped drinking hours prior to the T-section accident because her dad had asked her, like, well, why would you drink and drive? And she said, no, I had stopped drinking. I was okay to drive. So, I mean, at least in that situation, I don't know if she actually thought she would get in trouble for drinking and driving, even if she potentially could have. Just because even according to her dad, which, I mean, she obviously could have lied to her dad, but that there's a potential that this time she's like, shit, no, I actually am intoxicated.
I'm just so I don't know, man. So 7:47, they arrive on scene. They run her license plate. They figure out it's owned by Fred. They had Grafton call the residence that was listed, which I guess was the grandfather. They left a message. 7:54 is the first bolo going out. EMS arrives at 7:56. They stay 6 minutes. 7:57, Woodville Fire Rescue Pumper truck arrived with departments. 8:02, EMS cleared the scene. During this time, there was a cursory search up and down 112, Old Peters Road, and the game trail. 8:49, the fire crews left. 8:50, the tow truck leaves, and Maura's car was towed 10 miles to Levio's, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Auto Care Center on Route 10, which, interesting, it went to his personal garage. I don't know why, but it went to his personal garage.
He was actually not supposed to be the one that towed that night in that area. It was supposed to be someone else that was the tow truck for that area, and he actually had gotten kind of pissed, so he went to show up at the scene to like bitch and moan about it, and they were just like, fine, then tow it, like whatever. So then he ended up towing it, and then it, like you said, it sat in his personal garage, I want to say, for a few weeks, or a week at least, before anyone even looked at the car.
Yeah, I think they did the interview with him on the Oxygen special from a while back that we watched, and that's what he stated. And he said that like he was asleep on the couch and got the call to go, and him and another tow truck service, because it was kind of like in between. Like they don't really have like areas, but usually like the department would call them out, kind of like, you know, trade off like one for the other. And so they both responded to the scene, and he's the one who actually towed it. It was kind of interesting.
And I wish I could remember how, because, and again, the podcast, the link to the podcast, everything's in the description, guys. But the way that this Julia explains it with the tow truck drivers and then the 001 SUV and everything, it was so interesting. And my brain can't even remember how she was relaying it to relay it to you guys, but it was very peculiar and odd. And like Mallory said, there was an argument over jurisdiction with the tow truck, except certain tows were logged at a certain time, including the one with the officer, right? What was that?
So they had like a kind of get together party. If what I remember correctly, was that with the police, or was that the first responders, EMT? Do y'all remember?
I don't
What's the
remember.
question again?
I
So
feel
they
like it
said
was all of them.
Okay, yeah. So
together.
during the day, like, or at some point during the day, they had a big get together with the first responders, like in that area. So they were all out and about doing stuff, and there's been, you know, remarks or alleged theories that perhaps the person that was driving, or who was assigned the 001 SUV, I think he was a chief of police, right? That he may have been drinking.
Right.
And they also speculate on the podcast that even perhaps because of the time frame, from when she last had the voicemail she checked to whenever the incident happened, that perhaps it happened a little bit earlier than they're stating in the reports. Is kind of interesting, because typically if you have a car there and nobody around, wouldn't you look for them? I mean, why? I don't know. I just think that's really odd.
They left the area very quickly and did not search like you would think very long that first night.
Yeah, I think they said that the dogs had done like maybe 100 yards, and then they were like, sorry, couldn't catch anything, couldn't get a scent, and then
There
they
were no
just left.
footprints.
Yeah, no footprints, nothing.
but the dogs didn't even go out till like what, 2 days later, and the item that they gave were again the gloves that they were not even sure Maura ever wore before. Why didn't they use something like her running shoes or any of the items that they knew she wore often?
And we're in the car in the suitcase. There were other items there that they could have used, and they chose to use the gloves.
Let me see. I have this. Is this it? No, that's not it. Hold on. Is this it?
And something's interesting that comes out, like, I know we'll get into kind of the town and the people and the dynamics, but now a lot of the people that were previously a part of this department that responded to this crash and in the search of Maura, it's they've retired. So there's a quote unquote like a newer set of eyes and stuff on this case, which is kind of interesting. It's like the good old boys kind of.
Mm-hmm. And this is just an overview of the map. So this is where the accident right here occurs, and witness A is coming from this direction, and so does that SUV 001. This is where 001 passes witness A some point on this road, and then they pass again over here the second time. And then she sees 001 nose to nose with Maura's vehicle before any cop is supposed to be there or documented as being there. Interesting. But I'm trying to find 1 second.
Did you you read her email, right? Or whatever her message was that she sent for witness A?
Which email?
So hold on. So she posted on, hold on, she is April. In April, she posted on their form. I'm trying to find it 1 second. It was like later on. It was April 2005. It was an email.
Do you have it, Shay?
Yeah.
You should read it.
Okay. So this is a year later. It says this is an email between witness A and Helena, which it says, I visited Maura's website for the first time tonight. I'm so touched by the photo of her and her dad hiking. I have many like that of my daughter and my husband. I was haunted by her disappearance for a very long time. I travel Route 112 from Lincoln to Woodsville and back almost daily, often returning after dark. I saw her car that night. I arrived immediately after the police did. In fact, the same police car that responded passed me twice that night. First on Goose Lane, which is Swiftwater Road, and then again on Route 112. I remember mentioning it to my dad. He said, "How did you know it was the same police car?" Easy. It was car 001. It appears as though it went the wrong way on Route 112 and doubled back and then passed me. I'm acutely aware of my surroundings when traveling that road, since there is no cell phone service from farms on Swiftwater Road to the Beaver Pond by Lost River. When I saw the police car stopped, I had a strong intuitive feeling I should stop to help. But then I figured they are the police with radios, neighbors have phones, and my cell service does not even work. I continued on toward Lincoln. I took note, as I always do, of how many cars passed me and where. I know I did not see anyone walking along the road that night. I heard the police were questioning folks all along the road mid-morning a few days later. I was so surprised they did not have a roadblock during that time of night, especially the following week on the same night. Since I did not see anything, I figured I knew nothing. Then I realized the fact that I saw nothing could be helpful. I called the police and told them how many cars and where I saw them. I no longer remember that info now, although I can tell you where and how many cars I passed tonight on my way home. I was haunted for a very long time and wanted to help with the search. I wanted to reach out to the family. Instead, I prayed, wished, hoped, and tried to intuitively know where to look. I came up with no answers, but always scouring the roadside and river with my eyes on my way to work and home again, hoping for an answer. I feel like I was so close to where she was, but I never saw her. I'm so sorry. I'll continue to pray for her and her family. Peace. Karen McNamara.
Hmm. And she said she had no idea she was even referred to as witness A for and Elena's extended family of Maura, who runs the page. But she said she didn't know that she was even referred to witness A for the longest time, and that people were looking for her and wanting desperately to know her side of things. She had no idea.
It sounded kind of like she was younger then, from what I could tell.
I'm not sure. But okay, so this is where the crash site was, and this is where the dog lost the scent. So the dog followed Maura's scent a little bit up towards Bradley Hill Road, and then just it stopped in the middle of the road. But I don't remember, and Mallory maybe or someone who remembers, they said in the podcast that there was I don't know if it was like a DA or something that helped with the family that said there's no way that dog even managed to pull her scent. He doesn't buy any of it because they didn't do it until 2 days later, and the road was worked on. It was snowed, it was plowed, and he doesn't even believe that there was any chance of pulling a scent to begin with. But the way that they were laying it out made it appear like she either got in a car or left willingly or something like that.
Yeah, I think the different police in this case, either regarding Maura herself or like the disappearance herself to the accident, they all kind of very much found a narrative and stuck with it, I think.
Which allows people to speculate that there's
Yep.
corruption or something wrong because they didn't do the things that they should have done. So it does
Correct.
make them more sketchy, even if they're not.
Mhm.
It gives you that thought that maybe they're hiding something because they
Right.
didn't do the things they were supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah, there was I think what you were referring to, Melissa, was the retired LE officer that was now a
Yeah.
civilian of this small town, and he was trying to help the family.
John Smith.
Yes, there you go.
Just around the river behind. Sorry, you said John
That was
Smith.
my mom's first husband's name.
Yeah, it's such a it's such, I don't even like imagine it being a real name.
I know. Well, when they were like, he has a beard, he's a big guy, I'm like, what? I just think of the blonde guy from Pocahontas. Like,
Yes. When we all once more. Just sorry. Okay, so this was a news article posted, and it was the missing woman. She reportedly is familiar with the White Mountains region because of the family camping trips. Accident scene. After Murray's accident, Butch Atwood says he was returning from taking students skiing when he spotted Murray's car half in the road and half off the road without its flashers on at about 7:30 p.m. Others near the scene said the car's emergency flashers were on. Atwood, who drives a first student school bus, stopped his school bus by the Saturn to see if he could help. Murray was still in her car. Atwood said she looked about 20, and then it's cut off, so I don't know. Atwood said Murray didn't appear to be intoxicated, despite police having said a witness indicated she had appeared to be impaired due to alcohol. He lamented the fact Murray had not accepted his offer for help. He noted school bus drivers have to go through extensive background checks. So what had happened is around 11 p.m., they obtained to get a search warrant. Then we lead into Tuesday, February 10th. 9:30 a.m. A search warrant was issued by Judge Timothy McKenna. Charles and Cashin complete the search. Maura is identified as the driver. 1:30 p.m. A BOL through Vermont, New Hampshire. No, it says BOL.
Be on the lookout.
Yeah. I don't know why it doesn't say O at the end of it, but yes, a BOLO or be on lookout through Vermont, North Hampshire, and Massachusetts. Sorry, cannot do it. For Maura Murray, dark coat with black hair, 5'5", 120 pounds. At 3:20, they leave messages, but this says 5'5". But to be fair, I'm not reading this directly from the police report. So the police report originally put out a bolo the night before, 5'7". I don't know if they got her, now that they have her actual identification, if they got her exact height or what. But at this point, it's going out at 5'5", 120 pounds. And this is the next day. So then at 3:20, they leave messages on Fred's machine in Massachusetts, and he is in Connecticut. At 3:30, they called the Weymouth Police Department and directed to Lori Murray. At 3:40, they spoke to Lori and gave I don't know, gave CS Maura's cell phone and dorm number. I'm not sure who CS Charles. I'm not sure who CS is. Smith again tried Fred. Maura's dad left another message. At 3:51, they spoke with Hanson PD. 4:40, spoke with Kathleen Murray and requested a photo of Maura. 5 p.m., Fred gets a message from Kathleen, Maura's eldest sister. He is sitting in a parking lot when he listens to the message because he was at work. He worked in a hospital field. He could not just be on his phone. So it was when he was leaving and looked at his phone in the parking lot that he was first made aware. 5:17 p.m., Maura was referred to as a missing by Haverhill police. 7 p.m., UMass campus security asked to check Maura's dorm room. 8:25, they called Fish and Game. 8:40, Haverhill received a call from UMass campus security. Note room packed. So when they went into Maura's room, actually, the first calls they started getting were complaints of an alarm going off obnoxiously in Maura's dorm room because her alarm was going off for that morning and all of the students were able to hear it. And so they made entry the first time then. And then they went back, and what they found was, what was it? The letter from Bill back when he had cheated on her, and it was sitting, I don't remember where was it sitting on? It was sitting on something like on top of the printer.
Yeah, so it was like on top of a box, that was on top of a Duke basketball program or something like that, but it was a printed off email from Bill apologizing for his infidelity.
Now, the way that they printed that to the media, or no, at least the way it was noted with police, made it seem like they said it was a personalized letter left on top, which made it appear like Maura left a note behind. But we then later found out that no, it was an old letter between her and Bill. And why it was left there, don't know. Did she leave it intentionally there? Was it out because she was going through it? I don't know. But just to get into Bill a little bit.
Can I say one thing really quick? I remember at the time that they made it sound like it was like, an unaliving note. Because I was a stay-at-home mom at the time and watched a lot of like Nancy Grace and Greta Van Susteren, and they were talking about it. And I remember them, making it sound like that was the case.
Well, between that note and then remember the book they found in her car and it was marked at that chapter, they
Mhm.
tried to use that to circle in this idea that she committed suicide.
She went to her
Well-
favorite place in the world where she was happy to go unalive herself.
Except for that book, her dad even said that that's been one of her favorite books since she was a kid because it went over all of the spots that she was familiar with and that she loved up in the mountains. So it's not like she just read it and then did it. It was a book that had been her favorite for a very long time.
Correct.
And so I just want to show you guys this, and then we'll just talk about what our theories are, and then that last episode of the podcast.
Yeah.
But and I'm just showing you guys this. I'm not trying to get in your head at all, but I just found this out too. So this is Bill, Maura and Bill. But I didn't know Bill. Where is it? Here it is. Okay. This was Bill later on, more recently. Looks totally different.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I would
But-
not have said they were the same person.
No, not at all. But Bill has a little bit of a history. Okay.
Yeah. I knew that.
And so this article, which was published July 21st, 2022, and it says, during a July 19th hearing, a defendant pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault. And a trigger warning for everybody. William Rausch, 42, was originally charged with third-degree sex abuse. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor simple assault in front of a D.C. Superior Judge Marissa DeMeo. According to a proffer of facts on March 17th, 2011, so this is after Maura's disappearance, a woman went out to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with her colleagues. When she went back to the office to retrieve her coat after the night out, she got trapped in the entranceway of the double door. Rausch was contacted because he had the keys to unlock the door. Upon his arrival, he unlocked the interior door and told the victim that he wanted to speak to her, in which she readily accepted. Rausch then locked her in a conference room, turned off the lights, pushed her against the table, and pressed himself against her backside. So take that for what it is. When I'm not saying it has any correlation to Maura, but I do think it's interesting just to have in your mind. What happened to Maura in such a short window of time? We're talking about minutes. And if the scene isn't bizarre enough, and again, I urge you guys to please go listen to the podcast. It's linked in the description. We're not able to do it justice to be able to hear Julie, like Maura's sister, her own words and experience, and she lays it out so amazing. But it's the events leading up to it. It's the multiple car accidents and the stealing and the not so much the binge eating, because it goes hand in hand, like just with the eating disorder in general, but being at work and having that meltdown and being inconsolable and then looking up, trying to make reservations, but not making a reservation. And then telling your professors, I have a death in the family. That did not happen. To withdraw $280, which is her entire account, buy $40 worth of liquor, drive this car that you know is not reliable, get into an accident, and then poof, gone. What are your guys' thoughts?
I honestly don't know. And I think that's why Maura's case has stuck with me for so long. Because usually I have like an inkling of like, oh, I think this happened or I think this happened. One of the theories that I did that I don't you didn't mention, but was the aspect of kind of the individuals within the area. There were a handful of people who were questionable. There's been a handful of sightings of her. Um, there was sightings of her potentially at a party um, that night with some questionable people from the area. There was also a sighting of her, I believe, in Connecticut, um, where she was with like a larger, older man, and someone had said that she had said, "Help me," like mouthed it to her.
There's one in
Um,
Canada once too, right?
the what?
There's one in Canada once too, right?
Yeah. There's been a handful of sightings, and like, well, and not sightings, I should say. There's been a handful of people who have potentially looked like her that have been seen a lot of different places. Um, and there are two individuals in specific that lived in the area within a mile away of where the accident happened and everything like that.
Are you going to talk about
And which one?
the A-frame house,
Mm,
Is that the one with all
the
the
blood, and
brothers?
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
blood in the
so
closet?
there was a pair of brothers that were known for kinda one of them more than the other for doing kinda shady shit back in the day, and, um, I mean, there was a lot to it. If you listen to the podcast, they do go into it, but one
Yeah,
of the brothers. The what?
the rusty knife, Mondi said. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was the blood found in, like, a closet, but there wasn't enough DNA to be able to match it, but it was human. Um,
He
that
tried
same
for
guy
years
potentially, yep,
to
had
get that
poured the
tested.
concrete and a bunch
Years.
of other stuff. Yeah, and, like, the brother of the one guy, like, wouldn't let his kids around them, and there was a huge fight supposedly about one of their vehicles right around the time that Maura went missing. So I think that there are a lot of possibilities. Um, so to be honest, I guess I lean more towards the potential of she was trying to get away to just clear her head and then something happened. Um, but I still don't know because technically none of them would end well, and that's hard for me to say, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I sadly think that she did plan to go away. I think that she felt overwhelmed for whatever reason, and wanted to take a little time out. And, there's a lot of things going on. And I think that when that accident happened, someone, either someone she knew, someone she didn't know, took advantage of her desperate situation. And I don't think that she's alive. I believe that she died that night
Mhm,
or sometime shortly after. Um,
mhm,
could it be the guys from the ski thing? Could it be the neighbors? Could it be someone she traveled with from the party, and that's why that girl never wanted to talk? I don't know, but I think that someone could see that she was afraid, that there was alcohol, the police were coming, and they took advantage of that, her situation.
mhm. What
I
about you,
just
Melissa?
struggle with the window of time. I struggle with everything leading up seems planned. It seems like whether she was trying to get away for a few days or whatever, she had plans to go somewhere. Now,
Yeah.
where? Because she couldn't make it far. She knew she couldn't make it far, but at the same time, seems like she was reckless at this point. Not in a
Oh,
bad way. Reckless comes with danger. Like not a bad attitude type person versus she was just making reckless choices. Um,
mhm,
so maybe she was gonna try to just get as far as she could. Now I don't think it's weird that you don't have to make a reservation. There are plenty of times I've called places, and if they tell me they have a shit ton of openings, I won't reserve and I'll just go, So maybe she did have plans to go and just didn't make a reservation. Especially if she was looking it up numerous times. You couldn't get far with the little bit of cash she had. Her phone was never utilized again, well, we still don't know specifically what she took with her, what she had on her. I do find it peculiar that some of the alcohol bottles are not there that she had just purchased.
I have a question for you guys. What do you think about the caravan theory? Like, people were driving in a caravan style, and that's why she was gone so quickly. They were maybe like a minute or two behind. She hopped in the car with them, grabbed some alcohol, and wanted to get out of there before the police came.
Who though?
Maybe someone, supposedly there were some guys that she had met at a party a little bit before. You know how friends with that Sarah girl that
Mhm.
people like that she knew but didn't know, and maybe they were all going to go up and have like a week of partying, get away, just kind of like she wanted to escape and just have some fun and just not be stressed out, and something bad happened, or I don't know. That's a
No,
thing I've heard before.
because then I would have expected her to utilize her phone at
Right.
some point and it went
True.
dead.
Good question.
It's like she walked off and I could believe she got scared. And sorry, I'm just kind of pulling up visuals as we go. This is a property
Okay.
possession, but it didn't happen until 2004. I'm sorry, not 2004. Wait a second. I can't think. No, it happened June 25th, 2004. So they're just different items. I'm just pulling them up for anybody who's interested. And it went dead. I could see that she freaked out. I could see that, oh shit, this is like the third accident I'm in. There's
got
alcohol.
I got
Now I got witnesses. I got multiple people. Maybe she didn't see Faith because she didn't come out, but Butch, she saw. Butch made contact with her.
right.
And if you're gonna speculate about Bush, okay, he was in a school bus and he lived down the road, and it's within minutes he is back there and he's calling 911. So not saying it's not possible, but
I don't think it's him.
not plausible. It's possible. Do I think it's plausible? Not really. But that leaves me with, well, then where the hell did she go? Did she just, I don't know.
If she walked off, why haven't they found her body? Like,
Well,
all these years.
yeah,
Like,
I'd say
walked off in the snow, got scared, went running into the woods, trying not to get caught by police.
yeah.
And I thought that for a while, but then, like, where's her body, and why has no one ever found it? Any piece, like her phone, her anything,
Yeah, I'd
her
say
coat, her,
my thought is she potentially just was trying to get away from what I don't know. I don't even know if she really had a plan. And then when she actually did just slide into the snowbank and someone potentially could have just driven past and they were like, "Hey, do you need a ride?" She's like, "Hell yeah, get me out of here." And it just happened to work out that way. And then that person potentially did something to her. I don't know. I think she was in a very vulnerable state.
right.
I don't lean towards her hurting herself,
No,
but
I don't think she
I mean, I don't know, but I would say it's more of she was potentially unstable from something, was trying to get away, whether that be up to the cabins or whatever, and something happened along the way that she kind of maybe on a normal basis wouldn't be like, "Sure, I'll get in your van." But because she was already stressed into like a breaking point almost, she was just like, "Whatever, just get me out of here. I'm not going to jail." Like that's kind of where I stand with it, you know?
What about the ski kits? What do you guys think about the ski kits? The three
I
guys
would
that worked at the ski lodge.
And this
are
is an
those
age progressed photo of Murray guys, just released 2024. Just so you guys aren't confused. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're okay. What do you think, Melissa?
With ski kids?
The three guys that worked at the ski resort.
No, I say no to all of that. We're dealing with a short window of time. And so this is the hard part about it, is that I can't lean towards anything. If she walked off and got lost, I would imagine that they would have recovered her body by now. Her family has said that they've searched every damn there's only a few private properties that they weren't allowed to, mostly people allowed them even on private properties. But anything public, they have checked 100 times over. They would have found her body by now. Yet, if she was just willing to go with someone, Butch came up to her. Why not Butch? Then I'm supposed to believe somebody else came up really quickly. If anything, I'd be leaning towards why was 001 parked head-to-head, nose-to-nose with her
Yeah.
when they weren't supposed to.
And not reported.
And
he was
friends
with the dad of those two guys in the house,
Yep.
The A-frame house or whatever. The two men that lived there, that guy was good friends with their father. So maybe he did something, and this is just a speculation. Allegedly, I have no clue. I'm just throwing things at the wall like JP does in court. He, maybe had them take care of it. Like something bad happened and had some dumb riffraff here. You won't go to jail for this if you do this. Do you know what I'm saying? I have no clue.
Yeah.
I think something happened to her. That's all I know. I feel that in my gut. I think she ran into someone who took advantage of her situation. But otherwise, I have no idea.
But it's minutes. Faith was looking out her window. She heard, she was there. She eyes on her right there in that. What about Faith believing she saw a man smoking a cigarette? Why do you think they redacted that?
Because they knew the man who was smoking.
Why was there any man smoking?
The cop smoked, right?
No, when she first crashed.
Oh, I don't know.
Faith believed she saw a man smoking a cigarette before anybody got there, before Butch even got there.
That's why I always thought, like, at first when I thought that's why I thought someone was following her, like friends from school were right behind her. Someone was in the car with her and other kids were behind her, and that's why they saw a guy with her.
Do you think anybody was with her?
Like some guys that Sarah knew, or some guys she met at some party, and that's why the back window was open, and that's why there were, like, the alcohol was missing, and I don't know.
What do you think, Mallory? What do you think about the male smoking a cigarette? I think it's easy to get something like that wrong.
Yeah.
If you hear crash, boom, you look out the window.
Well,
someone could appear like a man for a second and then it not being, like.
Well, and it's interesting though, because I believe they partially take it back and say, no, I think that could have just been the dome light on in the car.
That's what her husband said. I didn't see that. I think it was the dome light.
Yeah. So I'd say it probably was just a trick of the light and just said the first thing that came to mind, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was accurate.
Right. If you had to pick a theory, Melissa, what do you think?
And I don't want to jump to, there's some type of cover up this going on. But if there's a witness, listen.
It's been 20 years.
She didn't walk off. She
No.
she wouldn't have been possible to survive. She did not have money. She had what she had on her. She would have turned up by now. Her family is convinced if she was out there, she would not do this to them.
Right.
She would not go this long, let's say, if she was even able to. I don't think it's likely some random person came in that tiny little time frame and grabbed her. So I would be more likely to believe there is a witness who says she saw a vehicle there before it's ever documented of being there. And again, this is why I urge you to listen to the podcast, because the way that she explains the tow trucks and who was on scene and the vehicle, it's very interesting. I would go towards that is the only thing that is likely right now is that. But then he comes back on scene shortly after, so I don't know. I don't know.
And she could have been tied up somewhere in that house, in that closet, or already dead, or I mean,
Right.
there's a reason that they have movies and TV shows about that kind of thing happening, because there's bad people in every profession,
Well, you want to tell them about the last episode, Mallory? Because I know that as soon as you listened to it, you were like, "Oh my god, that last episode!" And kind of
Yeah.
what they go
Hang on,
through.
I'm gonna actually.
the most
So
important part.
yeah, this is the part of this that I was literally like, holy shit, YouTube needs this, because it's been a shit show around here, around these parts. And so Maura's sister Julie started a Engage with Empathy campaign. So in the final episode of the podcast, Julie, as well as her brothers, her father, kind of go over how they have been traumatized, re-traumatized, and everything from the public, from social media, from true crime content creators, whether that be mainstream, whether that be YouTube. And they kind of go over the different things and how they've handled it, but also like how horrible it's been. Um, and they just kind of, I don't even know how to explain exactly how, but she kind of said like there's a lot of people that obviously took advantage of Maura's story. And she kind of goes over the fact that Maura became more known as her story and not as a person. She became a character in a story, not a missing person with loved ones who miss her and care about her, and like everything along those lines. And how the difference in true crime content has changed over the years. So Maura actually went missing the same week that Facebook launched. Um, so she was known as like the first missing persons case of the internet. And with that came a lot of trolling, came a lot of very negative things. Um, I know specifically they touched a lot on their sister Kathleen. Um, that as soon as the information about Kathleen's substance abuse issues and addiction issues and stuff like that came out, there was a lot of really, really horrendous stuff online in regards to her, to the point where she very much became a recluse up until her death, which I believe is in 2021. But they literally just go over the different things that have hurt them like during this time. But it also goes into being an ethical true crime creator, being an empathetic true crime creator, and kind of gives you a different objectives to hit to see if what you are doing in the true crime realm is helpful, is useful, or are you just taking advantage of the situation for clicks, views, clickbait, to sensationalize a story, um, to what's the word? What is the word that they use?
I'm not sure what the word they use.
Engage with empathy.
No, when they're utilizing like Maura's story Hang on, it's gonna bug me. They're utilizing it just to get money, clicks, views, notoriety, however. And so hang on,
Exploiting.
Yes, exploitation. Thank you. I was like, it's a word I use. Tell me I can't get it out. I have the page here, and
Okay.
I actually think
Yeah.
that it would be better to just share it, but okay.
Can I say one thing? Like for me, the main thing that resonated in my heart was that everyone was telling Maura's story and she was getting lost in it. It wasn't
Yep.
her. It was like it just really made me think about how we look at all of these cases and these
Mhm.
families and how we could all do better. As a viewer, giving our clicks and as you guys as creators sharing their story, you know.
Yeah, and I think this is actually a very good time to even bring up the Engage with Empathy campaign because we are seeing a lot of the exploitation, sensationalism now with current cases that are happening as well on
Mhm.
the YouTube streets. Do you want me to just kind of read through this,
Sure.
Melissa? Okay. So these are the campaign objectives. It says to offer support and solace to those struggling with loss and trauma, to educate content creators on the lasting effects their content has on those who have the most at stake in the stories they cover. So, in other words, even if you do one video, you don't know who's going to see that video, and it can have a lasting, it can stick negatively with these families and everything like that. To educate the public on how to identify responsible and ethical true crime content, and to engage the true crime community on issues important to the victims and families left behind in the wake of these tragedies. So it says, what does this mean? It says, as a person living alongside ambiguous loss, where ambivalence reigns and emotional closure is impossible, I'm here to tell you, engaging with empathy means everything. For families like mine, living each day with the lingering sense of grief and unknowing that accompanies a missing loved one creates a mountain of heartache that gets bigger and more insurmountable over time. A stark contrast to the notion that time heals all. Time does not heal all wounds. Our grief is frozen and closure is unattainable. Engaging with empathy means putting yourself in our position for just a minute. How would you like to be treated? How would you like your missing loved one to be treated? It doesn't mean censorship. It means balancing the value with the potential harm caused by exploiting private citizens with the worst day of their lives.
I love
Listen,
that.
yeah,
That was huge and
yep.
so spot on for what's happening right now.
They said your entertainment is our real life tragedy, is our real life nightmare. Listen, while we all are struggling with some real difficult stuff, treating people with empathy can make a world of difference. So this was the challenge. I actually posted this on my community post, I think the day that I listened to this, because
Yeah.
that was how incredible this final episode was. But this is the challenge to content creators in the true crime community, which, whether you're a creator, whether you are just taking in the content, you're a subscriber, you just listen to true crime, like it doesn't matter as long as you take in these stories or tell these stories. Regardless, this is important. So it
and
has
and support the people who do it the right way and
correct.
don't support the people that don't.
Yep. So it says true crimes exist because of our tragedies, and there is inherent responsibility to handle them with care. By the C in care is center the victim, centering the victim and those with the most at stake, balancing public interest with potential harm. So, in other words, make sure that you are focusing on the victim and that the way that you're telling their story, the information you're putting out is something that is going to not only could be seen by them, could be seen by the family, but that like Tess had said, they're not getting lost in that coverage. Um, A, avoid harmful speculation. Consumers drive the industry. Vote with your clicks. Ask if this content furthers the case or simply entertains. This is one part of this that I think is something everyone that takes in true crime, especially right now on YouTube, really needs to like read and reread and reread and reread.
Mhm.
Because yes, true crime is a genre that people find entertaining, but like they said at the very beginning of this, true crime exists because someone is going through a personal tragedy. It's not supposed to be entertaining, you know, in a way, it's not supposed to be. Um, R is research responsibly, be critical and curious of content, veracity of sourcing, and do not accept subjective interpretations as indisputable fact. This helps eliminate the harmful proliferation of misinformation. So, in other words, always do your own research and always ask for sources, look into the sources, and make sure that you don't just take someone for their word, because there's a lot of people that will just put out misinformation just to get the information out there, even if it's not true. And then the final one is E, engage with empathy, where its victims and families did not choose these tragic paths. Engaging them with a level of sensitivity is crucial in order to prevent exploitation and unfair public indictments of innocent people. Once again, it's very, very similar to kind of what we're seeing right now. If there's no evidence out there, if the police have not put out a person of interest, if the police have not done anything, then don't put out, you know, fake information or I don't even know, speculation, because a lot of these people are private citizens that did not sign up for this and should not be, they're innocent until proven guilty, and that's the whole point of this, you know?
Yeah.
As a
So,
as a viewer, I've noticed that a lot of times there are channels that want to be the first one, and
mhm,
those people end up posting a lot of information that's just not true.
Well,
yeah,
and we have to remind ourselves that it shouldn't be about being first. It's
Right.
about being right, being
Yep.
correct. But
accurate.
I think that this is such a good thing to look over, because we do get caught up as true crime creators, even with good intentions, we could get caught up
Mhm.
because you do want to bring your followers the breaking information and any developments. But this is why it's so hard when it's an active case, is
Mhm.
that you can't vet it all the time yourself, and there's so many cases that I look back to that at the time I looked at one way because I only had so many details, and now with all the information it's like, oh my god, like, can you believe back then that that's what we were thinking? We have to
Right.
remind ourselves that, but the damage is done either way, right? Because back
Yep.
then when we believed it, we acted on it, and I can't imagine the amount, like, it must be a very bad struggle of, all right, this is the worst day of our lives. This is a tragedy. We need a level of help, right? You're
Right.
entitled to a level of transparency, but at the same time, like it says, we're private citizens. This is our life, and that, so there's that line, and it's not always black and white. It's not always just very distinguishable, but I think we all could work on doing better, because we've heard the Gonsalves even say this in a recent interview.
Right.
Katie was not a part of a movie. She was not
Yep.
some character. She was a real person that is our daughter. She is a sister. She is a cousin. She is a friend. She is a niece. And it's we have to desensitize to a point just to even get through the coverage, but you don't want to get desensitized to the point where you're forgetting that these are real people.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like my grandma always said, you can't unring a bell. Once you do it and say it, you can't take it back. You can't put it back.
Yeah.
Make that noise not be heard and not have someone know that information. So you have to just be very careful with the way you're sharing it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Powerful. That's powerful right there.
Well, it is, and I think too, like even the way Julie was saying it, it's like if you can't do these 4 things and you can't follow, like if you're not doing this and you're not doing this, then you're not doing this, like then you should not be covering true crime. And she says it straight out, like you're not helping, you're not this the exploitation and everything like that you are doing is not helping. So why? And I
And
think go ahead.
well, and just look at what it says, because sorry, this is such a prominent discussion right now in this community. And
Mhm.
it does not say don't talk about it. It doesn't even say don't speculate. What does it say? Avoid harmful speculation, right? Like to say don't speculate, that's ridiculous, like, but speculate based on facts. Don't speculate based on speculation, because that's when you get really far off, and don't harmfully speculate, and so I feel like all of the people who are like, oh, you just don't want me to cover this or that. No, like I've speculated way too hard. I've really, and I did not, coming onto the platform, I didn't see that was an issue. I really did not. And I've realized over time, like, and I'm still learning, oh, wow, like my words do have impact, even if it's on a smaller level. That doesn't justify it. My words have impact. And I think that we all should be looking at this and really just digesting it and taking it into like a more than consideration, but taking it to heart and really trying to abide by it, because it's the basic, it's the at least we could do while covering these cases. It's the bare minimum.
Right.
And in time that could grow better relationships with, YouTube and content creators, giving out information, and law enforcement and families. Because if you're giving out information that is true and respectful and honorable, the families will want to work with you. I mean, if you look at the whole genre of true crime, there's a handful of creators that seem like they're on this upper level. And it's because those people don't post things right away. They wait and they get information, and that's why the families talk to them. I mean, not everyone. I mean, sometimes, you know what I'm saying. Like,
Mhm.
in general, in the long run, it's going to matter more, and I think it will do creators more good to want to do that.
Right.
Yeah. But like she says too, like the people who are taking in this content too, you have to vote with your clicks. If people are always going over to the exploitation and the speculation, then it's gonna push that type of content. And not saying don't go to channels that do that, but I'm just saying like be very aware that where you go.
No, really, you shouldn't go. You guys are creators, so you can't say it, but I'm just a viewer, and I can say that we shouldn't be going to channels that do that. We shouldn't. We're doing the opposite of what helps the families and the victims. It's not right, and we shouldn't do it.
She said it, not us.
You guys didn't say it with me. I said it. I'll stand on that. You guys didn't say it. Get mad at me. It's the truth. You shouldn't do it. We shouldn't do it. We should be better than that. If we
And
say
in a
we're
perfect
watching this
world, that would be
here,
great. Yeah.
we should be better than that.
Well, that's why we gotta just hold ourselves individually accountable, and I know I want to do better. I want to continue to try to do better. And that's all we could do. We can't control everyone else.
Yeah.
But it's over 20 years, and again, I urge everybody to please go listen to this podcast. It's really good. There was so much in it, and hearing it from the family themselves really made it hit differently. It hit differently, especially to have a perspective of this isn't just the timeline and what happened. It's how we were told our entire lives have changed, and we realized we would never, it's our last moments with Maura. our last memories, like how this all unfolded. And it was really well done. It was so well done. And the link is in the description. And I know we got into some topics with alcohol dependency and eating disorders, and all of the links for resources for anybody who may be watching or struggling themselves are in the description, along with part 1 to this 2-part series, which is on Malicious Intent's channel, is linked directly in the description, along with just her channel link. So please go and utilize those links if you feel the need to, but I would go and listen to the podcast 100%. And I hope that, the family will get the answers that they desperately are searching for one day. But I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's a case that will ever come to a close. I think, I don't know, it's sad. It's very sad. And knowing that her mom passed on Maura's birthday, and then her eldest sister Kathleen passed of the same cancer her mom had. I feel so horrible for this family.
They know now.
Yeah.
They know
Right.
now what happened. That's a silver lining, I guess.
Yep. But if
Thank
you
so much for sharing Maura's story, and
of course.
thank you both so much.
No, of course. I followed this from way in the beginning, all in the early days of this, but it was nice to come back around to go through it again, to listen to the podcast, and obviously just to go through it with you lovely ladies. It's been amazing.
And
Yeah,
I'd love
thank
to
you.
do more cold cases with you guys. I
Would love that.
I think that not enough people talk about cold cases.
I agree. And I would love to continue doing any coverage with you ladies.
Well, thank you
Yes.
guys so much. I'm going to jump down and let them say goodbye. Thank you all.
Okay, Tess, thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot, and I wish more people. I'm gonna share your community post that you made of this, because people need to see that. People need to read that in this community more so now than ever.
Yeah. And like, even if you don't have time to even just listen to the full podcast now, go listen to episode 8. That's where they kind of go over just this Engage with Empathy campaign and everything like that, and it's definitely important. But thank you, Melissa, for having me and
Mallory.
working with me on this one.
Hell yeah, I enjoyed it, and I look forward to doing more cases with you.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your night.
Good night.
Bye.
So if you or anybody you know has information on Maura's case, you can contact the State Police Cold Case Unit at 603-223-3648. It's been scrolling across the bottom of the screen this entire live, and it's also located in the description of this video. So thank you so much. Thank you to my mods, Harlot. Shout out to you. And thank you everybody who stuck around and was willing to listen and give us your thoughts. It's very much appreciated. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.